Today, we're diving into a story that involves pay cuts to federal workers that are working at the lowest ranked agency in the entire federal government. Some of these employees are already jumping ship. This is going to impact 20,000 people that are currently working at the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Let's get into it. Imagine this. You spend every working day of your life in a federal prison. You don't like it. Most people don't like it. The agency ranks dead last at 41 out of 100 possible points. This is because of leadership and recognition, among other factors. The one thing that's keeping you there is an up to 25% bonus. Well, that's about to get cut and slashed into pieces. We're talking about the retention incentive. How does that impact people? Okay, so take a GS7, for example, earning about $60,000 a year. A 25% bonus would be about $15,000. So that same federal worker that earns $60,000 a year, they would actually get $75,000 now. The bonus, of course, would still get taxed, but that extra money often makes a difference when you're thinking, should I stay here? Should I continue to risk my life in this profession, or should I look for another career? And it's not just with the Bureau of Prisons. Retention bonuses are used throughout different agencies, to include the VA and the Department of Defense, among others. They're talking about scaling back or eliminating their retention bonuses as well. And if you go on usajobs.gov right now, you can see that with the BOP, they're already reducing the retention bonus. Instead of 25%, it's 13%. Why is this happening? A BOP spokesperson said it's a significant budget shortfall. In an email, he's saying, yeah, we get it. These retention incentives are important. They're critical. But we got to keep the lights on. We got to manage our budget. And what happens? Let's say you're a correctional officer in Atlanta. What happens when your paycheck is now $200, $300, $400, $500 less every 2 weeks? That's not just walking around money. That's money for the rent. That's money for groceries. That's money for a lot of different things. That's money that's no longer there. Your paychecks are getting lighter. A lot of people, they're not sticking around to see what happens. They're already out the door. Let's talk about the fallout because it's already happening in different places in the country. Look at the Federal Medical Center in Kentucky. You have doctors and physician assistants. They're quitting because their retention bonus, think about 25% on a doctor's salary, talking about GS15. You're looking at $50,000 difference. They know they can make that money on the outside. They don't have to stay as a public sector employee. They can go make a lot higher salaries in the private sector. If the money disappears, why stick around? A union boss of over 30,000 workers says she's been flooded with calls. Hundreds of officers are texting and calling her saying, if this retention bonus is gone, you know who else is gone? This guy. This guy's gone because I'm heading out looking for better opportunities. BOP has 34,000 federal employees from medical professionals, correctional officers, administrative specialists, and they're short. They're short staff. It's not like they're meeting their quota. They're short 9,500 correctional officers and over 3,000 medical professionals. Not just that, but because they are short, the agency's use of overtime has spiked to 43%. Because if you're not properly staffed, you have to pull the overtime lever. Last year alone, officers clocked in 9 million overtime hours. 9 million. To be clear, a correctional officer is one of the most least desirable jobs. It is a necessary job, but not many people want to do it, and it's for clear reasons. Number one, high danger and violence risk. Then the high stress and burnout, the negative public perception, and low pay and retention issues. They're not looked at in the same light as a police officer or a firefighter, even though the work that they do is needed in society. And a lot of people are not even attracted to the profession. What I have seen is largely in more rural areas, you will have people gravitating towards detention centers. And the reason for that is the biggest show in town for a rural area is retail. What does retail pay? Not much. So the pay and benefits are way better than retail. It's usually two things. I was in a small city for a while, or a small town, should I say, and the two main employers there, One was education, the university or the public high schools. Two was the correctional center. And those are the two jobs where people can actually get benefits and can get a living wage. Because if you just spend all your time at the Family Dollar or the Piggly Wiggly, the paychecks are just not going to be enough. You're going to have to put in double or triple overtime in order to be able to survive in that type of situation. Shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is. So why doesn't BOP have the money? Just like every other agency, there are costs. What this agency does is they're responsible of keeping over 150,000 inmates in prison. So they have to worry about the utilities, they got to worry about the employee costs, they got to worry about medical supplies, logistics, all of that. What we just saw happen is a continuing resolution. It keeps agencies at the same level. So there is no additional funding for anything, really. Everything is kept at the same level until the end of September. Instead of providing extra money, the direction from Congress, the direction from the Trump administration is you want to find money, stop paying out these retention bonuses, and there's your money. Well, that solution looks good on paper, but once you put it into practice, you're going to end up losing people you can't afford to lose. Now, these incentives were never meant to be permanent in any agency. An agency has to review it periodically to see if it's still needed. Now, the way BOP is framing it is a noble sacrifice. They're protecting jobs and minimizing impact because they're freeing that money up. But my question to them is, what jobs are you protecting? If the jobs are coming with 25% less salaries, what jobs? Who is going to accept that role and do the same job and risk their life for 25% less than what has been the historic standard? Let's say 500 officers, they quit once these cuts go into effect. Who's picking up the slack? We already had 9 million hours of overtime worked last year. Does that number go up to 10, 11, 12, 15 million? How much can you work the people that are already there? You can cover down to a certain extent, but at a certain point, you're going to burn these people out. Then you're going to have to ask yourself, okay, maybe we need to start getting contractors. Maybe now is the time to involve the private sector. And with this agency, hiring isn't the real big problem. The real big problem is retention, because you have a 30% attrition rate here. The average across the entire federal government is closer to 6%. That's your churn, that's your turnover. Not in the Bureau of Prisons. Bureau of Prisons, you have 30% each and every year running for the door. Now, if you never worked in this agency, you could be saying, well, what's the big deal? Cut some officers, cut some pay, everything is going to work itself out. Well, the big deal comes when there's an increase in violence and inmate attacks. A few years ago, it was reported that in one calendar year, correctional officers and staff were attacked or had violence committed towards them 900 times, over 900 times. So with less staff, does that number go up or down? I'm going to take a guess and say it goes up. Does it go up to 1,000? 1,000 attacks a year? Is that acceptable? And then you have more escapes and security breaches. Over an 18-month period, 29 inmates escaped. They found half of them. So they found like 14, 15 of them. They brought them back. What about the other dozen? Well, they either changed their identity or they escaped the country because they just can't find them. There are also legal and financial consequences and rehabilitation and public safety failures. Think about if you're that officer, you're working a 60-hour shift. What happens when you're asked to do more overtime? And inmates notice when there's less law enforcement. So if they understand that typically in their prison, you're usually going to see about 20, 25 people walking up and down the halls, and now all of a sudden that number's been reduced by 25%, you don't think they notice that? Maybe the tensions build. Maybe the contraband increases. The violence increases. And the agency's not blind to this. Their email says, "We value our employees deeply." They're promising to monitor the budget and tweak their strategy. But that's a cold comfort when rent is due, when you have to pay that daycare bill. And what in the world is going on with daycare? You never notice those prices until you have kids. And then your hair's blown back because it is outrageous, the prices that they're charging for daycare. I think in this country, really, there should be more incentives to have kids. And the reason is simple. Kids are future taxpayers. They're going to be paying into Medicare, Social Security. They're going to be funding the future government. So why should we not encourage that, especially as we're witnessing the birth rate decline throughout this country and many other countries? Raising a child today is insanely expensive, not just the financial aspect of it, but of course the attention, the effort, the time that you need to put towards that kid to be a productive citizen within society, within this country. And I'm just getting off on a tangent with daycare. Daycare is outrageous. I don't currently have any kids in daycare, but I lived it long ago. I lived it. Okay, let's zoom out. The BOP has been a mess for years. We've had GAO reports calling them out for persistent understaffing and sloppy management. They're short 25%. That's what they need. That's what they do not have. 25%. You got buildings being dilapidated. You got leaks. You got broken locks. There's a lot of issues. The staff, the people in the agency, they're the glue. They're trying to hold it all together. Not sure how long that's going to last. But if you are a federal employee or you know one, they're not just worried about pay cuts. They're worried about keeping their actual job. If you don't realize it, as of right now, we have reduction in forces hitting a lot of different agencies. And what the Trump administration has done, they have encouraged the use of an AI tool. It's called AutoRIF, Automated Reduction in Force. If you want to learn more about that, check this video out next. Stay informed by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.